Hi, my name is Paul Vanderklay. I'm the pastor of Livingstone's Christian Reformed Church in Sacramento, California. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about a lot of different things. But I want to do a very brief video on what I'm calling the cyclical stages of sense making, because I think this is important because people right now are going to undergo a lot of change and disruption. And I think it's helpful if we can understand these stages as we go through them and to be self-conscious as we go through them. Our lives are disrupted. Our work patterns, our family patterns, our assumptions about the future are disrupted. A lot of people are going to have a lot of anxiety by these disruptions. And actually many of right now, because of the phases that we're in, a lot of people have a lot of adrenaline going. They're feeling a lot of meaning. But I suspect in a few weeks, when more people will be sick and more people will be dying, there will be a lot of pain around. And at that point, people are going to need a lot of pastoral care. They're going to need a lot of support. People will look to dull their pain in a lot of unhealthy ways. Tensions within families as they are together are going to rise. So I wanted to do a very brief video on what I call the cyclical stages of sense making. Now, sense making is trying to make sense of the world when our old assumptions of the world have been disrupted and dislocated. And so one term about what we do then is we're doing sense making. We're trying on new selves. We're trying on new stories. We're trying to fit again into a world that is different. And that's a very difficult thing, requires a lot of energy and a lot of thought, and actually it requires a lot of processing. And with these isolations, people are not going to have as much time to process these things as they can. This is why people should be using their phone, using their computers, using messaging apps to keep in closer touch with one another as we go through these things together. Now, I think there are 4 stages in sense making that many of us are going to be experiencing, and if we can understand these 4 stages, it can be helpful. The first stage is skepticism, and we saw that when people first heard about this virus. This isn't going to impact me. There's a lot of false alarms. This won't disrupt me. Well, now it has. Skepticism actually has its purpose. You shouldn't believe the first thing you hear when you hear it. Skepticism is a very healthy thing. The way you should use skepticism is do your research, explore the data, find out whether what other people are saying is true. And if you come to the conclusion that there is cause for alarm, then go into the next stage, which is in fact alarm. And alarm is important. We don't want people to get into panic. Panic is unproductive alarm. The purpose of alarm is to get people to make uncomfortable changes. You need alarm because what you do is you rally your forces to make the changes necessary to address the threat. The third stage is adjustment. And this is where you begin to make the changes that you will need to address the threat that you are faced with. And so you figure out the changes, you figure out the nuts and bolts. You look around for information or what other people have been doing. You look into the past for what people have done in the past, and you try to figure out, okay, how can I adjust to my new circumstance? How can I make sense of the changes that have been forced on me and not simply react to them, but respond to them in a healthy, productive way? And then the fourth stage is sustainability, where you say, okay, how can I live with my new adjustments in a sustainable way? A lot of the adjustments are facing the threat or meeting the needs. Now, how can we meet the needs on an ongoing basis? The new normal until a new normal that we can't know yet is worked out. Now, these stages go on collectively, and in many ways you can watch them if you go back over the timeline of, well, first there's skepticism, maybe some early warnings, but skepticism, and that's very healthy, and then alarm. Okay, now it's time to take action. In many ways, as a society, that's the stage we're in. We're in the alarm stage right now, and that's an important stage because what we're doing is we're mobilizing the energy to make uncomfortable changes. Following quickly on alarm is adjustment, and we use all that adrenaline and all of that energy to figure out exactly what the nuts and bolts look like. But the fourth stage is sustainability, and that's where I'm concerned about where people will be at, because the adrenaline is gone, we're now fatigued, the new normal is setting in, and we're beginning to feel the losses. And if the troubling predictions about what will happen in terms of people is true, it's at this point that we will begin to realize the loss of life or the loss of health. Or we will begin to realize that for a while we were all mobilized and getting along with each other when we're sharing the house. Now some of the old frustrations and tensions are back upon us, and now we have to get along with one another in the new normal. We're going to be going, not only do we go through these stages collectively, but we go through them individually, and you can go through them in terms of micro stages or micro cycles as well. When there's a new thing, first we're skeptical, then there's alarm, then there's adjustment, and then there's sustainability, and we'll keep going through them. Again, I wanted to do a very short video with these 4 stages because I think recognizing these stages as we're experiencing what's going on around us is something that can help us and say, okay, this is new. I'm skeptical. No, don't be skeptical. No, I'll be skeptical at first. Let skepticism have its due. Let me test it. Okay, I'm alarmed. I'm not panicked. I'm alarmed. I'm going to mobilize my resources to address the threat. Adjusting. I'm making changes to address the threat. Sustainability. How can we sustain this over the long run? If you are conscious of these stages, it could help you getting through what we all have to get through now. So thanks for watching the video. If you found it helpful, share it with somebody.